Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year, and welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. I'm so happy you could come by and visit. And yeah, I got some new wind chimes for Christmas that are rather loud, so hopefully it's not interfering. But we got a lot going on, and I recently did a video about starting seeds early. And I don't really want to waste too much time. I want to get straight to it. And in fact, a lot of people can start their seeds a lot earlier, which is one, why we're doing seed starting charts for people customized to your area. So if you want one of those, go ahead and there's an email below. Email me at sandybottomhomestead@gmail.com. Give us your city and state, and we will get you going. That last video, or a couple videos ago, about starting seeds earlier than you think you can, we got a lot of comments, and I've been going through them, and there's like a trend that I've been seeing. And so I just wanted to clarify something real quick. It was just after the new year, and you can see our garden still planted. It's emptying out slowly but surely. And you can see all of the stuff that we have planted in here. And I've gone through this multiple times on the channel, but we've got lettuces, radishes, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, bok choy multiple places, kale, rutabagas in the back, collards and carrots over there, and parsnips. All these things are growing, and this should be a good indication for you as a viewer if you're trying to figure out what to plant and when, like what can be planted in cool weather. So they're called cool weather crops for a reason. Now these should not be planted at the same time as your tomatoes, your peppers, your melons, any of that stuff. As a matter of fact, if you're starting them at that point, or if you're planting them at that point, you are behind the curve already. Doesn't matter. You need to be harvesting these cool weather crops before, or right at the same time, before, during planting of your warm season crops, or just after. So you should be kind of cycling the garden out at that point. And so what I've realized is a lot of people may think they're two-season gardening because they're growing in spring and summer. And if you grow in fall and winter, you're doing 3 or 4 seasoning, that's great. But there's a big difference for all of that. And there's just key things that we need to remember. So what I want to do is I want to walk around my garden real quick, and I want to show you what we plant starting like first to last in the spring. Now these are our fall crops that are held over. So they're kind of here, they're growing, but they're not really, we haven't replanted most of them. We will be replanting them soon, in actually 45 days. So we're gonna do that. And before we get into all that, I'm in coastal North Carolina, and I'm not gonna tell you my zone because your zone does not matter. That's for perennials. So we're not even gonna talk about zone anymore on this channel. I'm in coastal North Carolina. And the temperature today is, I think it's 52 outside. And at night, it's getting into the 30s to high 20s. So that's where we are right now with our weather. Start over here in the bed, and this is our row of garlic we do. That starts in the fall. That doesn't count unless you need to start your garlic in the spring. But when I lived in Zone 6 in Massachusetts, we started in the fall, so there is that. And then all of this is onions. So all of these onions that you can barely see from this distance, but they have just been planted. And if you can't plant in the fall, then you would plant these first in the spring. Onions are incredibly resilient. They can take a cold, and they will take a cold, and they'll take it like an absolute champ. So there is that. They're generally, like I said, they're gonna be one of the last things you plant in your garden, or the first you plant. And when I say spring, this is before your last frost. All of this goes in well before your last frost. So remember that. Sometimes 3 months, 2 months, even up to at least 1 month before your last frost. So just remember that as we walk through here. What's up? And kale here is very resilient. If we couldn't plant it in the fall and have it go through, this would be one of the first things that we plant as well. But we can plant it in the fall, but this is very cold resistant, frost resistant, and freeze resistant. We've had 24, 25 degree nights and not even a burn on the leaves. So you can see that that works out really good. And then we'll come over here to this bed. This is the cabbage, and this is gonna be one of the first things you can plant. So it takes a while, and it can really handle the cold very well. Same thing, never covered it, no damage from frost or anything like that. So this is doing very well. Right off the bat, let's not talk about onions at all. Let's just kind of focus on the last two crops. You've got kale that's going to keep reproducing over and over and over. You've got cabbage that's going to produce a big head to give you multiple meals. So the cabbage in particular takes a while to grow, and that's why you want to get it in as early as possible. The kale, like I said, cut and come again. A lot of people, I know my neighbor here, she has grown kale. She's got the same kale plants in the heat of North Carolina for multiple years in a row. So it's not really been an issue for her. I typically pull mine out, but there is that aspect too. So the next thing we have that would go in the ground, and for us, is going to be broccoli. Now, we don't have much broccoli here. We had kind of had a boo-boo with it, but the broccoli goes in, if not at the same time as cabbage for us, then just after. It needs to be a little bit warmer. And I will get into what we should be looking at for the weather here in a minute. So these kinds of things can happen as well. Just waiting for the weather, but a little bit warmer, but it just kind of depends on where you are. But broccoli, and then cauliflower is just after that. So I'd be remiss to talk about over here how we've got these collards that are just, I don't know, they're not doing great, but they're there. We've got these collards here, and they can go out pretty early too, almost the same time as the kale. I've never had one get bit by frost or anything at all. So even though they're small, we're turning the corner from the solstice, so this will actually help. But this is one of the first things you can put in your garden too. So greens are really good. Mustards would come next. So here's a couple mustard plants we have. They can go in the ground and really take off. They can take a big freeze, not as much as a cabbage. They can still take a freeze and take a frost as long as these plants are mature. And then you've got your carrots, so they're going to go in earlier because they take almost 100 days to produce. So you can do carrots at the same time. Brussels sprouts, I can't really give you too much guidance on those. It really depends on your area and your weather. But they're very cold resistant. Typically, some people in the more northern sections can plant them early and then harvest them throughout, but they take a long time to grow. So you can do that as well. Then we're gonna come in I'd say maybe a month after our cabbage, and then we're gonna put in our rutabagas. And they can actually be about 2 weeks after our cabbage. And then a week or two after that, we'd put in our turnips and our radishes. So we're gonna be putting those in at that time as well. Now, the reason why I'm bringing you in the greenhouse is because this is why I have it growing in here. If it was doing better outside of my greenhouse, and that was just my fault, it wasn't weather, then I would show you it outside, but this is what I got to work with, you know what I'm saying? Spinach is incredibly frost hardy as well. So you can get that, and you can grow it basically right around the same time as the rutabaga. You can just direct seed it, and it will germinate when it's ready to germinate. It's kind of temperamental, but it will take off when it's time. And I hate to go backwards, but the very first thing you can put in is like snow peas and stuff like that. They go in, they just direct sow them, they germinate right up. I mean, just beautiful. And then the last thing, as far as what we grow, and I'd like to think that we have a pretty good coverage of cool season crops here, would be our lettuces. So your lettuces would be the last thing. Depends on your weather, but I typically start putting my lettuces in about a month and a half before my last frost. So we'll start putting those in. And then after that, we're just kind of re-sowing over and over and over again. And we're gonna do a lot more videos about this because seed starting and planting is my passion, my absolute passion. I love it. I love the magic of it. So we'll talk about all that, but that's kind of the order in which you put things in. And I mean, we're talking months before we put in our tomatoes. So last year, when we put in our tomatoes, at the same time, we were harvesting the last of our lettuce, we were harvesting the last of our cabbage, and the spinach had about another month to go. And then that came out. And then we also had radishes we probably harvested for another couple weeks. Kale we harvested for about another month. And this, you know, and I'm talking, when I say harvested, I mean, we've got probably 15 harvests off of our kale plants. And then our carrots actually took about another month after our tomatoes went in before we planted. So you can see, I told you 100 days for carrots. So that means 60 days before, 2 months before the tomatoes went in, the carrots went in. So let's talk about the weather aspect of it. Like, what are the key parts to look at for the weather? Because this is really important. Because basically what we've done in this conversation is we've taken out, our last frost date, and we've basically thrown it out the window. So we need to talk about what we would look for in our, you know, our weather to let us know that it's time and it's okay to plant these things. And so basically, if you look at it right now, where I'm sitting, it's 50s, maybe 40s during the day, maybe upper 20s to 39 at night. And so once your weather starts to kind of mirror that to an extent, you want to start getting a couple warm days, you can start planting these things out. Now, remember, if you've grown them for a good period of time inside, which typically for most things is 8 weeks, and then you've diligently and carefully hardened them off outside, which we'll talk about in another video, then you will kind of get that, you know, you'll start building that strength within that plant. And then if you time it, so you're looking at your forecast and you're saying, okay, I'm getting a warm stretch, and a lot of places as winter starts to subside, it starts to warm up. And we got to look at temperature, not feeling. Don't look at what you think is warm. Look at the data, the science of it. Then you'll start to see that you'll get a period of time where it's going to get up in the 50s during the day. You may even kiss 60 one day. It may drop back down. This is your time in which to plant. So this is your time in which you want to get in. Now, I know I said 60s, but don't marry that. You know, the sun's higher. There's more sun, all that stuff. If we're doing season extension stuff, low tunnels, coverings, stuff like that, then you're even in a better place for this. And the reason why I really talk about this stuff is because I'm serious about growing food. Like, this is a thing for us. This is what we eat. So we want to have our food coming out in a rotation. That being said, you get these weather patterns right, you start learning your weather, you know how it is, you're going to get these plants in the ground well in advance of what you would put your tomatoes and peppers and melons and all that stuff in, eggplants, you know, you name it, beans, all that stuff. So we're giving it time to grow one crop in an actual spring crop, plant your summer crops, grow again in the summer, and then you can even tackle a fall crop, which most people can tackle. Most people can have a fall crop. It's to some extent. I can have a good fall crop. People further south than me can. I mean, there's people growing tomatoes. As you watch this video right now, they are harvesting tomatoes within our country, and some of our viewers are in fact doing that as well. So you got to think about this thing. Now, the one thing that really helped me figure this out was the way we eat. So we eat seasonal eating. We eat in cycles. So we eat a lot of greens right now. I mean, you saw what we're growing. This is what we're eating. You see that we're not eating a lot of tomatoes. We're not eating the peppers and stuff. We still will buy a couple peppers, but we're not really eating them. And then it just kind of cycles out. And this is how it's supposed to be. Go look in the grocery store. Walk in the grocery store and see what's in the middle on sale. I guarantee you it's not going to be a fresh tomato. It's going to be cabbage. It's going to be carrots. It's going to be onions. It's going to be all of these things. It's going to be stuff held over from fall, like sweet potatoes and stuff like that have finally cured. But this is going to kick you off in the right direction. So make sure that you're planting all of these plants before your tomatoes. So you should not really have both plants ready to be hardened off at the same time, meaning your seed starting station will have more produce on it. You will be able to grow more seeds, cycle them out, and clear it all out. Man, that wind chime is loud. And you'll be able to have all of this extra space that you didn't know you could have. For instance, when I'm planting my tomato seeds, I'm hardening off or getting very, very close to hardening off my cabbages and broccolis and all the things that we've just discussed in phases. So as one tray goes in, one goes out, there's room for me to up pot and move things around, and then we can kind of go from there. So this really works out well, and this is going to help you kind of, I hope this helps you wrap your head around when to plant things, because I saw in the comments a lot of people planting both cool and warm season crops at the same time, and that just shouldn't be the case. They need to be separate. So before the first frost, the last frost would be your cool season, after would be your warm season.
Good.